When we talk about heroes, whether in comics, movies, or myths, one moral line seems almost sacred: the prohibition against killing. Heroes, after all, are supposed to be better than the villains they oppose. So what happens when a hero decides to kill? Does it make them less heroic, or does it give a different perspective about justice, morality, and human imperfection? These are the questions that come with characters like Batman, a figure defined by his infamous no-kill rule. His refusal to take a life is his foundational principle, shaping how audiences view him and how villains survive long enough to terrorize Gotham again. But the debate around this principle reveals uncomfortable truths about morality, media, and the very idea of heroism. Batman's no-kill rule is arguably the most rigid ethical code in all of superhero mythology. Rooted in the trauma of witnessing his parents' murder, Bruce Wayne dedicates his life to ensuring no one else suffers the same fate. Yet the irony is that he wages a one-man war on crime using violence. Broken bones, shattered jaws, concussions. Batman brutalizes criminals, but always stops short of killing them. In foresight, this principle preserves his moral high ground, distinguishing him from the villains who kill without hesitation. But does his refusal to kill make him morally superior or irresponsibly complicit? From a moral philosophy standpoint, Batman aligns closely with obligation-based ethics, particularly the Kantian idea that some actions are categorically wrong, regardless of outcomes. Killing, for him, is one of those forbidden actions. To kill, even in the service of preventing further evil, would transform him into the very thing he despises. His restraint is meant to symbolize hope, a hero who refuses to cross the final line, even when pushed to the brink. Yet from another perspective, his stance crumbles. By refusing to kill, Batman allows repeat offenders like Joker to escape Arkham Asylum time and again, causing mass casualties. Anyone might argue Batman indirectly bears responsibility for those deaths, but his moral purity, in this framing, comes at the expense of innocent lives. So, is morality about adhering to principles or about maximizing outcomes? Batman carries the conflict between these two views. Beyond the philosophical debate, Batman's code functions on another level with media ethics. Comics and film are storytelling mediums, and the decision to let Batman live by this principle is partly narrative necessity. If Batman killed his rogues, Gotham's criminal underworld would be emptied in a handful of issues. More importantly, villains like the Joker, Penguin, and Riddler are cultural icons in their own right. Keeping them alive ensures perpetual conflict, fueling the ongoing saga. But this choice has ethical implications for the audience. Repeatedly showing Batman spare villains who then commit fresh atrocities creates a paradox for viewers. On one hand, it reinforces the aspirational message that heroes must not compromise their morals. On the other hand, it risks normalizing a cycle of violence without resolution, implicitly suggesting that holding to principle is worth endless suffering. This creates a ground for audience debate. In this case, should Batman finally end the Joker? Or would that irrevocably corrupt him, and by extension, corrupt our vision of what a hero should be? Meanwhile, the audience reactions to the no-kill rule reveal how emotionally charged the subject is. Many fans admire Batman for drawing a hard line. They see in his refusal to kill a reflection of our collective yearning for heroes who carry absolute moral standards. In a world where power often corrupts, Batman's restraint makes him trustworthy. Others, however, grow frustrated. They point to countless storylines where Gotham pays the price for Batman's ideals. For these fans, his no-kill stance feels less like moral superiority and more like stubborn negligence. Debates on forums, podcasts, and conventions often get heated. This divide demonstrates how media ethics and personal morality collide. The character becomes a canvas on which audiences project their own values. Those who lean toward tyranny find inspiration in Batman's code. Those who lean toward rationalism find him guilty for failing to act decisively. Both responses speak to why the character endures, because his choices never resolve the debate. Eventually, whether killing makes a hero less heroic depends on what we expect of heroes in the first place. While Batman refuses to cross certain lines, even when the world around them begs for a darker solution, not every hero fits that mold. Some don't just break the rules, they blow them apart with a wisecrack and a trail full of bodies left behind. This brings us to Deadpool. This character is unapologetically lethal. He's not bound by oaths, creeds, or the kind of solemn promises that drive traditional superheroes. For him, killing is both a job and an opportunity for him to express himself. He shoots, stabs, and decapitates with creativity, all while cracking jokes that mock the very idea of moral boundaries. Unlike Batman, whose story relies on the struggle not to kill, Deadpool's narrative thrives on the chaos of unrestricted violence. From a philosophical perspective, Deadpool is a fascinating case study. He doesn't operate within duty or rules, nor does he fully commit to functional ideas of maximizing good outcomes. Instead, his morality feels closer to relativism, the idea that there are no absolute rules, only choices, and the consequences are dealt with later, if at all. For Deadpool, morality isn't about consistency or ideals. It's about survival, loyalty to a handful of people he cares about, and his own unpredictable sense of justice. This doesn't mean Deadpool lacks a moral compass. He has one. It's just erratic and heavily influenced by his trauma and humor. He kills villains without hesitation, but he also fights alongside the X-Men, protects innocence, and occasionally makes selfless sacrifices. The contradiction is what makes him so interesting, especially when you consider the fact that he is both a mercenary and a savior, both a clown and a killer. Moreover, Deadpool's willingness to kill serves a different purpose than Batman's restraint. Deadpool's violence is exaggerated to the point of absurdity. His kills are often so over the top, with chainsaws, fourth wall breaks, slapstick gore, that they function less as moral statements and more as dark comedy. In this way, Deadpool operates almost like satire. He exposes the contradictions of superhero storytelling by taking them to the extreme. His kill anything that moves approach forces us to confront the opposite issue that when violence is constant, it loses its weight. This is where Deadpool becomes more than a character. He becomes commentary. By gleefully killing enemies we would expect to survive in another franchise, he challenges the audience to reconsider why we excuse violence in one form, but condemn it in another. His moral chaos reveals how much of our media consumption is shaped not by universal ethics, but by narrative convenience. Meanwhile, fans are sharply divided on what Deadpool's brand of killing says about him. For some, he is a refreshing antidote to the self-righteousness of traditional superheroes. His irreverence, his lack of pretense, and his willingness to take action without moral hand-wringing make him more relatable. Life is messy, unfair, and often brutal, so why shouldn't a hero be just as messy? For these fans, Deadpool's violence isn't disqualifying, it's honest. His presence pushes the boundaries of what we are willing to accept from those we call heroes. We want justice, but we also crave vengeance. We value morality, but we are entertained by violence. He's not the hero we are supposed to want, but in a world that's rarely black and white, he might be the one we secretly understand the most. However, there's another figure who treats killing as the central principle of his entire mission. That figure is Frank Castle, better known as the Punisher. He's not like other vigilantes. He doesn't wear a mask to protect his identity. After the brutal murder of his family by mobsters, Castle abandoned any notion of rehabilitation, law, or restraint. His answer to crime is direct, violent, and final. Criminals must die. Philosophically, Castle aligns most closely with result-based thinking. For him, the moral worth of his actions lies in the fact that every criminal he executes is one less threat to society. Unlike Batman, who tolerates an endless cycle of capture and escape, Castle takes the pragmatic view that killing is the most efficient solution. In his eyes, mercy is weakness, justice without execution is incomplete. But here is yet another paradox. While Castle frames his violence as justice, it's difficult to separate it from vengeance. His mission is born out of personal rage and grief. When the media presents him as an anti-hero, it starts a debate about whether he glamorizes vigilante violence. His skull logo has even been adopted by military and police groups in real life, sometimes in ways that people change his narrative. In the comics, Castle explicitly rejects being seen as a role model, but media portrayals often lead some viewers to celebrate his vigilantism as righteous. However, audience reactions to the Punisher are deeply divided, perhaps more so than with Batman or Deadpool. Many people sympathize with Frank Castle on a visceral level. His family's murder is a tragedy that instantly evokes empathy, and for these viewers, the Punisher represents the fantasy of decisive action against evil, a man who refuses bureaucracy and hesitation in favor of results. Others, however, see Castle as crossing an unforgivable line. To them, he isn't a hero at all, but a mass murderer covered in the illusion of justice. His incapability to stop killing suggests that he is trapped in his trauma, perpetuating violence instead of healing from it. In this view, Castle isn't saving society, he's feeding his own cycle of pain, dragging everyone down with him. This is why Castle endures as a cultural flashpoint. He embodies both our darkest fears and our rawest desires, the fear that evil cannot be stopped without force, and the desire for swift, uncompromising justice. So if a hero is someone who protects the innocent, Castle qualifies, but if a hero must also embody restraint, hope, and morality, then Castle fails. Moreover, there's another side to this debate. Heroes who don't start out as executioners, yet cross that line under extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes their actions aren't born from a philosophy, but from grief, trauma, and desperation. While Castle has his own fair share of this experience, no one carries this descent more powerfully than Wanda Maximoff, better known as Scarlet Witch. Her story isn't about vigilantism like Castle's. It's about what happens when a hero's immense power collides with unbearable loss. Wanda Maximoff has long been portrayed as one of Marvel's most complex characters, a woman capable of extraordinary compassion, but also catastrophic destruction. Unlike Deadpool's chaos or the Punisher's deliberate executions, Wanda's killings often stem from emotional breaking points. Every trauma chips away at her stability. Wanda's choices invite us into the debate between moral responsibility and moral luck. While killing is always wrong, regardless of intent or circumstance, Wanda often kills because her grief overwhelms her control, or because she genuinely believes she's protecting her loved ones. In that sense, this is a more complex judgment, because if her actions are driven by love or a desire to create a better world, do the ends justify the means? This makes Wanda's morality very unstable. She isn't cold-blooded like Frank Castle, nor gleeful like Deadpool. She is, in many ways, the most relatable. Someone who wants happiness, who suffers loss, and who makes decisions that spiral into tragedy. What's notable is how Wanda's narrative changes depending on the medium. In comics, she has been cast as both savior and near-apocalyptic threat, with events like House of M leaving fans debating whether she could ever return to heroism. In film adaptations, she's given a more empathetic arc, with her pain emphasized as much as her destruction. These choices reveal how the media switches the ethics of telling a story about a hero who kills not because of ideology, but because of unbearable sorrow. Among audiences, Wanda possesses one of the most emotionally charged divides in superhero discourse. On one hand, some see her as a victim of endless suffering, a woman whose choices should be understood in the context of her grief. This group often argues that her actions, while tragic, don't erase her capacity for good. They make her journey richer and more relatable. On the other hand, Wanda's power comes with responsibility, and her inability to control it makes her responsible for every life lost under her watch. Empathy for her suffering doesn't negate the fact that she sometimes chooses destruction. To be honest, Wanda ceases to be a hero the moment she places her personal desires above the lives of others. This clash between empathy and accountability is what makes her story relatable. Her arc adds another level to the morality of killing debate. Unlike Batman, Deadpool, or The Punisher, her story isn't rooted in rules, satire, or vengeance. It's about the fragility of the human heart when burdened with godlike power. Now that we've seen heroes who refuse to kill, those who kill with humor, others who kill out of vengeance, and still others who kill under the weight of grief. But the conversation doesn't end in the pages of comic books or the frames of superhero films. Some of the most profound explorations of this theme emerge in interactive storytelling, where audiences don't just watch a moral choice, but experience it. And few stories test our understanding of heroism, morality, and killing more deeply than The Last of Us and its protagonist, Joel Miller. Joel's world is not Gotham, not the MCU, not a battlefield of colorful supervillains. His world is a collapsed society, overrun by infection, violence, and scarcity. In this brutal reality, killing is about survival, protection, and sometimes love. His story raises perhaps the hardest question of all. When a hero kills, not for justice or vengeance, but for someone they love, is it still wrong? Or is it the most human choice of all? Before anything, Joel is introduced as a grieving father who has lost his daughter in the earliest days of the outbreak. That wound defines his every decision. Decades later, when he meets Ellie, the teenage girl who becomes like a second daughter, his entire worldview narrows to one focus: keeping her alive at any cost. Unlike Batman's code or the Punisher's mission, Joel's morality is personal. He doesn't kill because of duty or philosophy. He kills because he cannot endure another loss. For him, the moral worth of an action isn't measured by abstract justice, but by whether it protects Ellie. When Joel learns that Ellie's immunity could lead to a cure, but only if it costs her life, he massacres the Fireflies and rescues her, dooming humanity's chance at salvation. In that moment, his love and fear outweigh the greater good. In comics or films, audiences can debate a hero's morality from the outside. In The Last of Us, players embody Joel, pulling the trigger themselves. He forces audiences into complicity, making them participants in his choices rather than detached observers. Unlike Deadpool's satire or Wanda's tragic collapse, Joel's story avoids exaggeration. The violence is raw, grounded, and intimate. In this way, The Last of Us expands the debate about heroism into new territory. The ending of The Last of Us is one of the most hotly debated moments in modern storytelling. Some players view Joel as a selfish villain who doomed the world for one girl. They argue that his refusal to let Ellie sacrifice herself strips him of heroism, revealing him as someone who values personal comfort over collective survival. To these critics, Joel is no better than the monsters he fights. He simply wears a different face. Others, however, defend Joel fiercely. His decision is the essence of human love, the refusal to let a child die, no matter the cost. They argue that Joel's choice doesn't make him less heroic, but more profoundly human. After all, heroes aren't gods, detached from emotion. They're people shaped by bonds, grief, and hope. In the end, whether we see these superheroes as aspirational figures or not, some lines cannot be crossed, and maybe that's the point. Heroes, like morality itself, are never simple. Ultimately, that's perhaps the greatest challenge of all, recognizing that when heroes cross the line, they may not look like monsters at all. They may look like us.